The air over the Bismarck Sea tastes like aviation fuel and salt. It's March 1942, and Captain Pappy Gunn watches through binoculars as another B-25 Mitchell makes its bombing run over a Japanese convoy. The twin-engine bomber drops low, releases its payload and pulls up hard. The bombs hit water, 50 feet short. The freighter steams on, untouched, its deck crew probably laughing. Pappy lowers the binoculars. His jaw is tight. Around him, the flight line at Port Moresby hums with the sound of men losing a war they can't afford to lose. Mechanics patch bullet holes. Pilots stare at maps that show more red than blue. The Japanese control the sea. They control the supply lines. And every day, more ships arrive with more troops, more ammunition, more certainty that the Pacific belongs to them. Pappy is 44 years old, too old to be flying combat missions, some say. But those people don't know what he's lost. His wife and children were in Manila when the Japanese invaded. He doesn't know if they're alive. He doesn't know if they're in a prison camp or worse. What he does know is that every Japanese ship that makes it through is one more nail in the coffin of everyone he loves. He walks across the tarmac toward a grounded B-25. The Mitchell is a beautiful machine. Twin Wright Cyclone engines, tricycle landing gear, a glazed nose for the bombardier. It was designed to drop bombs from altitude, to be precise, to be surgical. But precision does not work when your target is moving at 20 knots, and your bombardier has 3 seconds to calculate wind, speed, and gravity. Pappy climbs into the nose. He looks at the Norden bomb site, that $15,000 piece of classified technology that promises pinpoint accuracy. In theory, in practice, skip bombing, where you drop a bomb low and let it skip across the water like a stone, has a hit rate of maybe 5%. Torpedo runs are even worse. The Mark 13 torpedoes are so unreliable that pilots joke they're more dangerous to the crew than the enemy. He taps the glass nose. "You're in the wrong place," he mutters. That night, Pappy doesn't sleep. He sits in his tent with a bottle of whiskey and a pencil. He sketches, he calculates. The problem is simple. Bombers are trying to sink ships by dropping things on them. But ships move. Ships have gunners. Ships have time to evade. What if you didn't drop anything? What if you just flew straight at them and never let go of the trigger? The B-25 has one forward-firing 50 caliber machine gun in the nose. One. It's meant for defensive suppression, not for attack. But the nose is mostly glass and empty space. Space that could hold more guns, a lot more guns. By dawn, Pappy has a plan. It's insane, it's unauthorized, it's probably a court-martial waiting to happen, but it might work. He finds Lieutenant Colonel Paul Squeeze Wurtsmith at breakfast. Wurtsmith is exhausted, unshaven, and in no mood for experimental engineering. But Pappy doesn't give him a choice. He spreads the sketches on the table. We're mounting 8 50 cals in the nose, fixed forward. We fly low, straight at the ship, and we shred it. Wurtsmith stares at him. "You want to turn a bomber into a fighter." "I want to turn a bomber into a gun platform that can't miss." "The nose is glass, Pappy. You can't mount guns on glass." "We replace the glass. Metal nose. 4 guns on each side. We get close enough. We can punch through a freighter's hull like paper." Wurtsmith shakes his head. "You're talking about modifying an entire aircraft. We don't have the parts. We don't have the authorization. Hell, we don't even have the tools." Pappy leans in. "We have wrecked aircraft. We have machine guns from downed fighters. We have metal sheets from supply crates. And we have mechanics who know how to make things work when the manual says it's impossible." He pauses. "We also have Japanese ships coming through here every damn day, and we're not stopping them." There's a long silence. Outside, another patrol takes off. The sound of engines is constant, like a heartbeat that never rests. Wurtsmith finally nods. "You get one plane, you prove it works, we'll talk about more. But Pappy, if this doesn't work, it's on you." "It's already on me," Pappy says. The hangar in Townsville, Australia, is a cathedral of improvisation. It smells like oil, sweat, and desperation. Pappy Gunn stands in front of a B-25 Mitchell that has been stripped down to its bones. The glazed nose is gone, removed carefully and set aside like a relic of a more civilized kind of warfare. In its place, a skeleton of metal brackets waits to be filled. Sergeant Ed Rodiek wipes his hands on a rag. He's a farm kid from Nebraska who could rebuild a tractor with baling wire and a prayer. Now he's helping rebuild a war. "We pulled 6 50 cals from wrecked P-40s, he says. "We can add 2 more from a crashed B-17 turret. That gives us 8 forward-firing guns." Pappy nods. "Convergence point. 300 yards. Any closer and we're committing suicide. Any farther and the spread's too wide. 300 is fine. We're not going to be dogfighting. We're going to be flying straight and level, right down their throat." Another mechanic, Corporal Jimmy Diaz, looks up from where he's welding a gun mount. "Sir, we're adding about 800 pounds to the nose. The center of gravity's gonna shift forward. We might have tail-heavy issues on takeoff. We'll counterbalance with sandbags in the rear until we figure out a permanent fix," Pappy says. "What about ammo?" "Each gun gets 400 rounds, Rodiek says. "That's 3,200 rounds total. At 600 rounds per minute per gun, you've got about 40 seconds of continuous fire before you're dry. 40 seconds is a lifetime when you're that close." They work through the night. There are no instruction manuals for what they're doing. North American Aviation, the company that built the B-25, would probably declare the entire project insane and void the warranty if warranties mattered in war. But war has its own rules. War rewards the clever, the desperate, and the slightly unhinged. The guns are mounted in pairs, 4 on each side of the new metal nose. The arrangement is brutal in its simplicity. No turrets, no swivels, just raw, fixed firepower pointing dead ahead. The electrical system is rewired to handle the trigger mechanism. The ammunition feeds are jerry-rigged from spare parts and salvaged equipment. It looks like something a madman would build in a garage. It looks perfect. Pappy climbs into the cockpit. The B-25 feels different now, heavier, meaner. The control yoke has a new trigger, one button that fires all 8 guns simultaneously. He flips it with his thumb. The click is satisfying, deadly. "Test fire?" Rodiek asks. "Not yet. I want to see how she handles in the air first. If we blow out every hydraulic line on the ground, we learn nothing." The next morning, Pappy takes the modified B-25 up. Alone. No co-pilot, no bombardier, no gunners. Just him and the machine. The takeoff is rough. Diaz was right about the weight distribution, but once airborne, the plane responds. It's nose-heavy, yes, but stable. He takes it out over the Coral Sea, away from shipping lanes, away from anything that might ask questions. At 2,000 feet, he levels off. The ocean below is blue and endless. He arms the guns. His thumb hovers over the trigger. For a moment he thinks about his family, about his wife Polly and his children somewhere in the Philippines, about whether they're still alive, about whether any of this matters. Then he presses the trigger. The B-25 shudders. It's not a vibration, it's a convulsion. 8 machine guns open up simultaneously, and the sound is apocalyptic. The sky ahead fills with tracers, red lines of death that arc out and then vanish into the distance. The plane slows, fighting against the recoil. Pappy compensates, pushing the throttle forward, keeping the nose steady. He counts, 5 seconds, 10, 15. The guns chew through ammunition like a chainsaw through wood. Brass casings spray into the slipstream, glittering in the sunlight. At 20 seconds, he releases the trigger. The silence afterward is deafening. Pappy checks the instruments. Engine temperature, normal. Oil pressure, normal. Hydraulics, intact. He grins. It's the first time he's smiled in months. He keys the radio. "Tower, this is Gunn. Tell Wurtsmith we're in business." Back at Townsville, word spreads fast. Mechanics gather around the B-25 like pilgrims around a shrine. The metal nose is scorched black from muzzle flash. The smell of cordite hangs in the air. Pappy climbs out, and for a moment, no one speaks. Then Rodiek breaks the silence. "How many more do we build?" Pappy looks at the plane. Then he looks at the horizon, where Japanese ships are sailing, confident and unchallenged. As many as we can, fast as we can. Within a week, 3 more B-25s are converted. Then 5, then 12. The modifications become standardized. The pilots call them strafers or gunships. The Japanese, when they start encountering them, have a different name. They call them flying demons. But the real test is still coming. Pappy knows it. Everyone knows it. You can shoot up the ocean all you want. But until you point those guns at a ship, at an enemy who shoots back, you don't know if you've built a weapon or just a flying coffin. The order comes in late February 1943. Intelligence reports a Japanese convoy heading through the Bismarck Sea. 8 transports, 8 destroyers. Troops and supplies destined for New Guinea. It's the largest Japanese naval movement in months. Pappy gathers his pilots. They're young, most of them. Kids who should be in college, not flying experimental gunships into flak and gunfire. But they don't hesitate. They've seen what conventional bombing does. They've seen the misses, the wasted runs, the empty victories. "We go in low," Pappy says, 50 feet off the water. "We hit them from the bow. We don't pull up until we've torn through everything in front of us. If your guns jam, you get out. If your engines fail, you ditch. But if you can fly, you keep firing." One of the younger pilots raises his hand. "Sir, what if they're waiting for us?" Pappy looks at him. "Then we kill them first." The mission launches at dawn. The sun hasn't cleared the horizon when Pappy Gunn's formation lifts off from WWII. 13 B-25 strafers, their metal noses gleaming dully in the pre-dawn light. Behind them, conventional bombers and fighters form up, a total of over 100 aircraft. But Pappy's gunships will lead. They'll open the door. They'll prove that his insane modification wasn't just theory. The flight to the Bismarck Sea takes 90 minutes. 90 minutes of watching the ocean slide by below, dark and infinite. 90 minutes of checking guns, testing triggers, running through scenarios. The radio is quiet. Everyone knows the plan. Everyone knows what's at stake. At 07:15 hours, the convoy appears on the horizon. Through binoculars, Pappy counts them. 8 massive transport ships, the kind that can carry 1,000 troops each. They're surrounded by destroyers, sleek, fast, bristling with anti-aircraft guns. The formation is tight, disciplined. The Japanese aren't expecting trouble. Why would they? They've been running these convoys for months. American bombers have been ineffective, annoying but not dangerous. That's about to change. Pappy keys his radio. "All Strafer units, this is lead. We're going in at wave-top level. Target the transports first. Bow to stern. Walk your fire through the superstructure. If you see a destroyer, ignore it unless it's directly in your path. Our job is to kill the ships that carry the men." Acknowledgements crackle back. Pappy drops altitude. The B-25 descends until the propellers are throwing spray off the wave tops. At this height, radar can't track them effectively. At this height, they're just a blur of metal and rage, racing toward an enemy that doesn't yet understand what's coming. 300 yards out, the Japanese gunners spot them. Tracers arc up from the destroyers, red and green lines of fire that look almost beautiful in the morning light. Flak bursts bloom black against the sky. A B-25 to Pappy's left takes a hit in the wing, staggers, but stays airborne. The pilot compensates. They keep coming, 200 yards. Pappy can see individual sailors on the deck of the lead transport now. They're running. Some are manning deck guns, swiveling them frantically toward the approaching aircraft. Others are just staring, frozen by the realization that something is very wrong. 100 yards. Pappy's thumb finds the trigger. 50 yards. He presses it. The world explodes into noise and fire. 8 .50 caliber machine guns open up simultaneously, and the effect is biblical. The B-25 shudders like it's hitting turbulence, but Pappy holds it steady, the control yoke locked in his grip. Ahead, the transport ship begins to disintegrate. The first rounds punch through the bow, ripping into metal that was never designed to withstand this kind of assault. The convergence point, 300 yards, where all 8 streams of fire meet, is exactly at the waterline. Steel plating tears open, rivets pop like corn kernels in a fire. The rounds chew through bulkheads, through storage compartments, through troop quarters, where men are still waking up to the sound of their ship dying. Pappy walks the fire up. The nose of the B-25 rises slightly, and the stream of bullets climbs with it, raking across the bridge. Glass shatters. The helmsman disappears in a spray of red. Navigation equipment explodes. The ship's horn blares, a long, mournful wail that cuts through even the roar of the guns. 5 seconds, 10, 15. At 20 seconds, Pappy is directly over the ship. He pulls up hard, the B-25 climbing steeply, and looks back. The transport is listing to port. Smoke pours from a dozen holes in its hull. Fires are spreading across the deck. Men are jumping into the water. But Pappy doesn't have time to watch. There are 7 more transports. He banks left, lining up on the next target. Around him, the rest of the Strafer formation is executing the same brutal choreography. B-25s scream in at wave-top height, guns blazing, then pull up and circle for another pass. The sea is churning with explosions. A destroyer takes a strafing run and loses its entire forward gun crew. Another transport, trying to evade, turns directly into the path of 3 strafers at once. The combined firepower is overwhelming. The ship doesn't sink, it comes apart, splitting down the middle like kindling under an axe. The conventional bombers arrive. 10 minutes later, they drop their payloads on ships that are already burning, already crippled by the strafing runs. It's not precision bombing. It's a mercy killing. By 0800 hours, the entire convoy is destroyed. Not damaged, not crippled, destroyed. 8 transports sunk or sinking. 4 destroyers dead in the water. The remaining Japanese ships are fleeing, trailing smoke and listing badly. Pappy's B-25 is nearly out of ammunition. His hands are shaking, not from fear but from adrenaline and the sustained vibration of the guns. He takes one last pass over the wreckage. The ocean is carpeted with debris, lifeboats, bodies, oil slicks that burn with black smoke. It's carnage on a scale he's never seen. It's also victory. He keys the radio. All units, this is lead. Form up for return to base. The flight back is quieter. One B-25 doesn't make it. Engine damage forces a ditching, but the crew is picked up by a rescue boat. The rest land at WWII with empty magazines and scorched gun barrels. As Pappy shuts down his engines, mechanics swarm the aircraft. They're already checking the guns, measuring wear, making notes for the next mission. Because there will be a next mission, and a next, and a next. Word of the Battle of the Bismarck Sea spreads through the Pacific theater like wildfire. General George Kenney, commander of the 5th Air Force, calls it the most decisive aerial engagement of the war. Intelligence estimates that over 3,000 Japanese troops drowned. Critically, the supplies they were carrying, ammunition, food, medical equipment, went down with them. The Japanese base at Leh, starved of reinforcements, will fall within months. But the real story isn't in the statistics, it's in what Pappy Gunn proved. He proved that innovation doesn't have to come from laboratories or Pentagon committees. Sometimes it comes from a middle-aged pilot with a pencil and a grudge, working in a hangar with mechanics who know how to make the impossible happen. He proved that the difference between losing a war and winning one can be as simple as asking, what if we do this differently? The Strafer modifications are officially adopted. North American Aviation, the company that built the B-25, sends engineers to study Pappy's work. They're horrified and impressed in equal measure. The modifications violate a dozen safety protocols and engineering principles. They also work better than anything the designers had imagined. By mid-1943, Strafer B-25s are standard issue in the Pacific. The Japanese learn to fear them. Convoy routes are changed. Ships travel at night. Some captains refuse to sail at all without heavy air cover, which the Japanese increasingly cannot provide. The supply line that once fed the Japanese advance begins to wither, and every ship that doesn't make it through is a small victory for the men who fly the gunships. Pappy Gunn keeps flying, he keeps modifying. He adds more guns. Eventually, some B-25s carry 14 forward-firing 50 calibers, plus additional guns in side blisters for strafing ground targets. He experiments with rockets, with napalm, with anything that can turn a medium bomber into a flying weapon of mass destruction. He survives the war, though barely. By 1945, he's flown hundreds of combat missions, been shot down twice, and accumulated enough near-death experiences to fill a book. In August 1945, Pappy finally gets the news he's been waiting for since 1942. His family is alive. They survived the Japanese occupation of Manila. They were liberated by American forces, malnourished and traumatized, but alive. When he reunites with them in Brisbane, he doesn't talk about the strafers or the battles or the body count. He just holds them. For a man who spent 3 years finding new ways to kill, it's enough to remember how to live, but the strafers fly on. Even after Pappy returns to civilian life, the modifications he pioneered continue to evolve. The Korean War sees derivatives of his designs. Vietnam brings gunships like the AC-47 and AC-130, aircraft that take the concept of flying gun platform to terrifying new levels. Modern close air support doctrine, the idea that aircraft can provide sustained, devastating firepower directly on the battlefield, traces its lineage back to those first modified B-25s over the Bismarck Sea. Military historians debate Pappy's legacy. Some call him a genius, others call him a cowboy who got lucky. The truth is probably both. War rewards initiative, but it also rewards results. Pappy delivered both. He saw a problem, bombers that couldn't hit moving targets, and solved it with brutal simplicity. Strip out the complexity, add more guns, fly straight at the enemy. It wasn't elegant, it wasn't safe, but it worked. There's a photo taken in 1943, after the Bismarck Sea battle. Pappy stands in front of his B-25, his flight suit stained with oil and sweat. He's not smiling. He looks tired, like a man who's seen too much and done things he'll never forget. Behind him the Strafer looms, metal nose, empty gun ports, a machine built for one purpose. The caption reads, Captain Paul Gunn and his modified B-25 Strafer, credited with revolutionizing anti-shipping tactics in the Pacific theater. But the photo doesn't show the hundreds of hours spent in that hangar in Townsville. It doesn't show the arguments with superiors who thought he was crazy. It doesn't show the sleepless nights, the calculations, the desperate conviction that there had to be a better way. It doesn't show the moment when he first pressed that trigger and felt the plane come alive with lethal purpose. That's the part that matters. That's the part that changed the war. 70 years after the Battle of the Bismarck Sea, a restored B-25 Strafer sits in the National Museum of the Pacific War in Fredericksburg, Texas. Its metal nose is polished to a dull sheen. The gun ports are empty now, the weapons long since removed. Visitors walk past it, reading plaques, taking photos. Most don't fully understand what they're looking at. They see an old airplane, a relic. They don't see desperation welded into metal. They don't see the moment when a man decided that the rules didn't matter as much as the outcome. They don't see the mechanics who worked through the night, or the pilots who flew an untested weapon into the teeth of enemy fire, or the Japanese sailors who watched in horror as their ships were torn apart by a form of attack they'd never imagined. Innovation in war is often born from necessity. The atom bomb came from a fear that the enemy would build one first. Radar came from the need to see bombers in the dark. Penicillin came from infected wounds that wouldn't heal. And the B-25 Strafer came from a pilot who refused to accept that the only way to fight was the way it had always been done. Pappy Gunn didn't invent the machine gun. He didn't invent the bomber. He just looked at both and asked, what if we combine them in a way no one expects? That question, asked in the right moment by the right person, changed the course of a theater of war. It saved lives, American lives at least, which was all that mattered to the men who flew the missions. It ended Japanese supply lines. It shifted the balance of power in the Pacific at a time when the balance was tipping the wrong way. But it also cost lives. Thousands of Japanese soldiers and sailors died because of Pappy's innovation. Some were combatants, some were just men following orders, sailing ships, trying to survive a war they didn't start. War doesn't allow for moral ambiguity in the moment. You shoot or you get shot. You innovate or you lose. The reckoning comes later, in quiet moments, when you count the cost and wonder if there was another way. Pappy Gunn died in 1957, at the age of 59. He never wrote a memoir. He never sought glory. After the war, he went back to being a civilian pilot, flying cargo routes in the Philippines, the same place he'd been when the war started. When people asked him about the Strafers, he'd shrug and say, "We did what we had to do." That was it. No grand speeches, no philosophizing, just a simple statement of fact. But the Strafers remain. Not the physical aircraft, most were scrapped after the war, but the idea. The idea that sometimes the best weapon isn't the one the generals planned for. Sometimes it's the one a desperate man builds in a hangar because he's tired of watching his side lose. Sometimes innovation is angry, improvised, and built from spare parts, and sometimes that's exactly what wins wars. The museum visitors move on. The B-25 sits silent, its story preserved in plaques and photographs. Outside, modern aircraft fly overhead, jets with precision-guided munitions, drones that can strike targets from continents away. The technology has changed, the precision has improved. But the fundamental truth remains the same. War is won by those who adapt fastest, who see problems not as obstacles, but as puzzles to be solved, who refuse to accept that the current way is the only way. Pappy Gunn understood that. And for a brief, violent moment in the skies over the Pacific, he proved it. 8 machine guns in the nose of a bomber that was never designed to carry them. A modification that shouldn't have worked, a tactic that violated every principle of strategic bombing, and a battle that killed thousands and saved thousands more. History remembers the big moments, the invasions, the bombs, the treaties, but wars are also won in hangars by men with wrenches and wild ideas. They're won by pilots who fly untested machines into combat. They're won by the kind of innovation that comes from desperation, rage, and the refusal to let the enemy have one more day of easy victories. The Strafer's legacy isn't just in the ships it sank. It's in the message it sent: adapt or die, innovate or lose. And sometimes the craziest idea in the room is the one that changes everything.